The heavy rains have hammered California over the Christmas and New Year season, which resulted in a loss of billions of dollars. But the bad weather has also revealed as to how vulnerable homeowners are actually due to this unpredictable pattern of climate change. Heavy rains flooded homes, which resulted in a lot of people losing a lot of their property. Cars were trapped in the state earlier this month. There were parts of highways and hospitals and grocery shops that were all shut off due to the serious flooding which the state of California witnessed. And what is strange is that despite this kind of catastrophic flooding that California has witnessed, there are very few homeowners in the state who are adequately prepared for flooding. Now, according to federal data, only about 2% of people in the state of California, that's about 1 million people, have insurance policy in effect that covers flooding as the reason of damage. Now, prior to the rains, wildfires and droughts were the prevalent pain points for homeowners in California. But 2023 appears to be changing that. The concerns for local residents who now worry for what future will look like are entirely different. It's not just wildfires and droughts, it's also massive flooding, which can result in a huge amount of damage to their homes and also to their property. In California, 32 trillion gallons of rain and snow fell since Christmas. The water has washed out roads, it has knocked out power, and it's also created mudslides by soaking the wildfire-charred hills. It has resulted in serious damage in 41 of the state's 58 counties. At least 21 people are said to have been killed in the course of these floods, and it now takes a lot of study for people to in fact even come to terms with the amount of damage that this deluge has caused. But what is strange and what is perplexing a lot of the administrators in California is that despite the fact that this is the scale of flooding that they've been subjected to, most of the people in the state of California simply do not have insurance cover to pay for the damages that they've now sustained due to this flooding. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what happens to all these people who in fact ended up losing their homes without having adequate home insurance in California, we're being joined by Laurie Goring, who's joining us from London. She's, of course, the climate change editor at Context. Now, Laurie, this is something that a lot of people will have to confront with in the days to come. What's happened in California, towards the end of last year, towards Christmas and New Year, is that there was a huge amount of flooding which happened, and just about 2% of the population in the state of California, we're given to understand, actually has insurance that covers them from a natural calamity like flooding. Do governments need to do more to ensure that people are in some ways safeguarded when, climate incidents like this happen?
Yes, the problem is that the standard homeowners insurance that most people would have bought in California doesn't cover flooding. This flooding is quite an unusual thing. People in California face a lot of risks, earthquake risks, they face risks from wildfires and things like that, but many of these people had never seen a flooding problem before or knew that it was something they needed to worry about. And if they did know, they thought that flood insurance was perhaps too costly for them to afford.
Absolutely, indeed. It's also about, because flood insurance would have been fairly more costlier with the other insurances that they already purchased. Now, the question that, a lot of people have asked within California is those areas that were not regarded as high risk for flooding also ended up getting flooded and therefore suffered some serious damages. Now, people have turned around and said that if the government, in the maps that they were given when they were purchasing these properties, had highlighted these areas as high risk for flooding, then probably they would have purchased flood insurance as well. Do you think there is a certain amount of responsibility that the government also needs to share?
Yeah, there is in a way. The Federal Emergency Management Authority in the US is the one that keeps flood maps, that a lot of these decisions are made about how big your flood risk is. If you have a mortgage through the government, you need to buy flood insurance, and this helps these maps determine that. But the maps are a bit out of date. There's been a big effort to update them and to update the costs of insurance to make it more reflective of the risk, but that is behind. And I think the problem with climate change that we see all around the world, not just in California, is that there are many very fast changing risks. People are being exposed to risks they had no idea that they were going to be exposed to, or that they needed to be taking out insurance for. That is a problem everywhere. And we're also seeing in some parts of the world limits of insurance. If there are many people that are making a lot of claims under insurance, it's also getting more expensive for the companies, which drives up the cost of the premiums and may encourage people not to buy the insurance.
You know, this is an area a lot of people say they perhaps never predicted that a flood of this nature would in fact impact the home where they were, investing a lot of their life savings in. So the question that I want to ask you is, with this being the pattern in terms of how, places of habitation will change in the coming years, do you think we'll expect a lot of migration from areas that earlier were considered as good property for people to invest in, no longer will remain as good properties that people would want to invest in the coming years?
I think that we've seen some level of exodus out of California already, not because of these floods, but because of the really worsening risk of wildfires and drought there. So yes, I do think climate change is going to change the cost equation for families. People will decide where is a reasonable place they can afford to live, and a place that presents a huge risk to your house, which for many people is the main asset they own, is a serious problem. So yes, I do think that we're going to see both the hazards themselves and the ability to deal with those hazards through things like insurance or government help having a role in how much people can stay where they are and how much they may need to move.
Absolutely, indeed. My last question to you, Laurie, is this. Is this, the fact that California experiences these floods and it has been witnessing these humongous amount of rains over the course of the last few days, and also the fact that it is also very prone to droughts and also to forest fires, is there something that humans can do differently, or is this something that's simply beyond human hands and is an act of nature?
The first thing that people need to do differently is to make every possible effort to reduce climate changing emissions as swiftly as possible. We need to reduce global emissions by nearly half by 2030, and we are not at all on track to do that. Because there are always things we can do to adapt and to try to lower the risks for people. But if the emissions continue to rise and climate change continues to strengthen, it will be very, very difficult for us to adapt to what's coming, and it will be very, very expensive, much more expensive than actually making the change to clean energy that we need now.
Absolutely, indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Laurie Goring, for joining us from London and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.